Recording this. Okay.
Namaskar and welcome to this webinar on reporting outcomes of Ayurvedic clinical practice. This webinar is being organized by Central Ayurveda Research Institute, which is a CCRS unit at Mumbai, Bharatiya Sanskruti Darshan Trust, Wagholi, and Center for Complementary and Integrative Health, Savitribai Phule, Pune University. The Center for Complementary and Integrative Health at Pune University hosts editorial office of Journal of Ayurveda and Integrative Medicine. This Journal of Ayurveda and Integrative Medicine in its 14th year of continuous quality publications, and journal has recently announced a special issue on cancer care and research. The guest editors, Dr. Julia Arnold from NCI, United States, and Dr. Manohar Gundeti are the guest editors, and I thank both of them for this responsibility. This particular session is being coordinated by Dr. Manohar Gundeti. Dr. Gundeti is a scientist at Central Ayurveda Research Institute, Mumbai. He's a researcher working in this area for a long time. Dr. Gundeti is also working as a lead member from Indian side in the active collaboration of CCRS with NCI. And Dr. Gundeti is associate editor of Journal. I welcome everyone on behalf of the journal and the organizers, and now request Dr. Gundeti for further proceedings. Over to you, Manohar.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Girish, for this nice welcome and kind words. Thank you very much for introducing this. Yeah, this is a very unique event. The Journal of Ayurveda Integrative Medicine is coming up with a special issue on integrative cancer care and research. And on this background, this particular webinar has been organized for sensitization, orientation, and for the scholars, the practitioners, for the case reporting, writing, and reporting outcomes in the cancer management care. So me and Dr. Julia are with me for this session, for this particular issue as a guest editor. Thank you for the editorial team of JAIM for offering this responsibility. Thank you. So CCRS Mumbai Institute, which is engaged in clinical research with focus on the cancer and other non-metabolic disorders. We do research and healthcare in integrative oncology setup. I'm thankful for CCRS for this particular event to collaborate with JAIM. So to start with, I welcome and invite Dr. Julia Arnold, with a special volunteer at National Cancer Institute Office of Complementary and Alternative Medicine. Dr. Julia Arnold obtained her PhD in experimental pathology. Her postdoctoral training was in the NCI Cancer and Cell Biology branch with the Johns Hopkins Oncology Center Division of Experimental Therapeutics. Her area of expertise is experimental pathology, cancer cell biology, and cancer prevention. So I invite Dr. Julia to start the session with talking on and introducing about the special issue of this JAIM. Dr. Julia.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gundeti and Dr. Tilu. I'm going to try to share a screen and let me know if this works. How's that? Can you see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Great. So welcome and thank you all for joining us today. I have been in cancer research for many years, but I'm also very interested in Ayurveda and studied it a little bit, but certainly not as much as all of you. And I really look forward to working with you and developing programs in Ayurveda. And today I would like to give a brief overview on this upcoming issue in JAIM, the Journal of Ayurveda Integrative Medicine. The special issue is called Integrative Approaches to Cancer Care and Research. And again, I speak for myself, not for the NCI. So this JAIM issue arises from this meeting that was in December. And a meeting was on Ayurveda and cancer in Pune, and it included talks on cancer Ayurveda perspectives in surgery, chemotherapy, radiotherapy, and a lot of other discussions about the role of panchakarma in cancer, on drug standardization, patents, Ayurvedic formulations, and integrative oncology, etc. The issue will include many of these presentations, but also welcomes other research in this area. Now, it's interesting because what this is integration of Ayurveda and cancer care. What we talk about integration means that we're taking Ayurveda, integrating it with current cancer research, and we appreciate the uniqueness of the paradigm of Ayurveda compared to allopathic medicine. Make a little pointer here. You can see that? Okay. The conventional Western medicine or oncology uses basically a reductionist approach to treat disease and uses molecular technologies to understand mechanisms. And the approaches are different in Ayurveda, where they use complex multimodality interventions aimed to prevent disease process. It's more intuitive and based on traditional knowledge and using a systems approach. The allopathy uses diagnostic procedures, blood, cell, molecular pathways. In Ayurveda, the diagnostics are the tenfold examination, the pulse, doshas, all in a whole different way of the client being observed. But I think we can appreciate both systems as they can both benefit from each other and their perspectives and technologies. So for this issue, we are calling for papers in integrative approaches to cancer care and research. You know, we've seen great advances in cancer care of the emerging genetic, epigenetic, immunotyping technologies, and we are able to employ these technologies to evaluate Ayurveda and yoga therapeutic strategies. So what, if we look at the integrative approach of Ayurveda in the AYUSH systems, we can get clues and to promote translational research in cancer. So this is possible in this issue to allow the crosstalk between researchers of diverse knowledge disciplines. The special issue calls for research articles from diverse domains, including research methods, cancer biology, integrative oncology, interventions for improving the quality of life and survival of cancer patients, and also outcomes of integrative treatments for various types of cancer. The special issue welcomes many different types of entries, including original research articles of experimental, preclinical, and clinical studies, review articles, thought leadership articles, clinical case reports, etc. And the link for the special issue is listed here, but it's also in your announcement. So, in the development of evidence-based Ayurveda, which is our goal, we are approaching these questions and hope that many of these articles will address some of these questions, such as how do we get more reproducible clinical research? How do we use controls in this research and the use of placebos? And we'll be talking about the case studies. And we look at a lot of positive studies and case studies, but how do we document the negative results? How do we know how many patients have been treated to get the positive result? And what happens if that doesn't work? I think it's important that we get a general standardized documentation of protocols and methods Ayurvedic medicines used, whatever the different panchakarma methodologies, and how they were scheduled. We need to also consider patient privacy and informed consent in these studies, standardize the herbal contents, understand the unique mechanisms of herbal protocols. So over time, it would be important to incorporate a data sharing system across Ayurvedic practitioners and researchers so we can collect the data. Many people are doing this work, but how do we put it together and really understand the outcomes? It'd be interesting to have correlative studies of biomarkers of treatment, and then just a continual evaluation of what is working and what is missing. So these are all research opportunities, not just for this journal issue, but for the long-term goal of developing evidence-based Ayurvedic practices for the global community. So thank you for your attention. I think we just continue discussion about case reports with Dr. Manohar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Dr. Julia Arnold, for this overview of the special issue and the areas to be covered. So in continuation to that, now we'll go ahead, because now you have set a tone of this program. So coming to the different type of articles to be published in this journal, today we'll be discussing on case reports and case series. So for this, we have a panelist, the first speaker, Dr. Ram Manohar. Dr. Ram Manohar is a research director at Amrita Center for Advanced Research in Ayurveda, called as AKARA, School of Ayurveda, Amritapuri. Dr. Ram Manohar is well-known physician, researcher, and a good orator. And his research interest areas are clinical research, network pharmacology, whole medical systems research. So I invite Dr. Ram Manohar to please speak on case reports, why, how, and where. Over to you, Dr. Ram Manohar.
Thank you, Dr. Manohar, for the introduction. I hope my slides are visible.
Yes. Perfect.
So today I will be very briefly discussing about the case reports, its importance, addressing 4 key questions: what, why, when, and where. So first of all, what are case reports? I mean, case reports represent articles that describe and interpret an individual, case as a detailed story. So it's a very descriptive, way of reporting an outcome. So in medicine, a case report, when you look at it from a medical point of view, because the word case report is often used in other disciplines also, so I want to make that distinction. It is a detailed report of an individual patient's symptoms, signs, diagnosis, treatment, and follow-up. And what are the parameters? I mean, what are the key guidelines that we should keep in mind while writing a case report will be discussed later, the care guideline. But these are the major components of a case report. And the case report will also contain a patient's demographic profile, but usually it will also describe an unusual or novel occurrence. If you look at the evidence pyramid, the hierarchy of evidence case reports are at the bottom. So I'd like to also highlight the difference between a case report in Ayurveda. What is the relevance of case report in Ayurveda and modern medicine in a short while? So usually from a modern medical point of view, case reports are not the main way to generate evidence, but it is also very important in generating evidence from the bedside, from actual clinical practice. And usually a case report is written when there is an unusual or novel occurrence, an outcome in clinical practice that is unusual, which is not expected. And so it remains also very important to give new leads to research. We can also look at a case report as a rapid, short communication between busy clinicians who may not have time or resources to conduct large-scale research. And it is through these sharing of clinical experiences that many a time new ideas and new avenues for research emerge in medicine. So now we address the question. So we got some idea about what is a case report. Now, why should a case report be written at all? In modern medicine, evidence is generated mainly through a lab to clinic approach, and RCTs constitute the source of evidence base on which treatment guidelines are made. So, in modern medicine, a case report is written, as I was mentioning, only when something unusual happens during the treatment. Whereas in Ayurveda, evidence generation follows a different trajectory. It moves from the clinic to the lab. Because Ayurveda is a medical system that has been existing for a long period of time, many things are already in practice. In modern medicine, another research model, another paradigm is required because new drugs are being made, discovered, and they have to be tested in humans for the first time. And that cannot be in the clinic through in a clinical setting. It has to be in a clinical trial setting. There has to be preclinical studies. Whereas in Ayurveda, we are mostly dealing with treatments that are already in practice for many hundreds of years. So there is a slight difference in how we can look at the relevance of case report in modern medicine and in Ayurveda, because the whole edifice of evidence is built in two different ways in these two systems. In modern medicine, the common reasons for publishing a case report are an unexpected association between diseases or symptoms. Some atypical cases you are noticing, which is not mentioned, not documented before, then the clinician reports it. Or it could be to report an unexpected event in the course of observing and treating a patient, or to share findings that shed new light on the possible pathogenesis of a disease or an adverse effect, or unique or rare features of the disease that have not been adequately documented or studied, and one clinician in his clinical practice discovers it, and that needs to be reported. Or it is to report unique therapeutic approaches, variation of anatomical structures which is accidentally found in the course of clinical practice. So this is the reason why case reports are mentioned. So most journals, when you want to publish case report, this is a challenge. Many international journals in the field of modern medicine may not be very welcoming of Ayurveda case reports, because we write a case report not exactly for the reasons a modern case report is written. So to summarize, case reports are accepted in journals if you have unusual observations, if there is an adverse response to therapies, or unusual combination of conditions leading to some confusion in diagnosis, to illustrate a new theory, question regarding a current theory, or personal impact. So these are the reasons why case reports are accepted. But now I'd like to discuss a few points about why we need case reports in Ayurveda. Ayurveda is a system of medicine, as I was mentioning, with continuous ongoing clinical practice. So innovation is most of the time, we are repurposing old drugs or modifying it to modifying standard treatment protocols based on individualized needs of the patients. So this is not done. We don't do a clinical trial before we administer a repurposed drug to a patient. As long as it is mentioned in the text, it is classical, and the ingredients are all known to be safe, and we understand them from Ayurvedic perspective, we don't need to do a clinical trial to make these modifications. So such clinical innovations are not done based on preclinical studies or clinical trials. This is a big difference between Ayurveda and modern medicine. So for this reason, there is a need to report outcomes of clinical practice, because our treatment is personalized. We don't follow exactly the same protocol for every patient. I'd like to illustrate, if in modern medicine, if you publish a case report illustrating a treatment in one patient, it's not even relevant, because if you do an RCT, it's based on the presupposition that if it works on this small group, it's going to work on the whole population. So you have to write a case report only if something unexpected happens. Otherwise, you are expecting the same outcomes in all the patients, the same treatment protocol. Whereas in Ayurveda, every time we treat a patient, there is a potential to write a case report. But I want to tell that it will not get accepted in journals. If you write a case report for every case you treat, journals may not accept it. Many journals have rejected repeated case reports on the same disease, saying that there is already a publication of a case report on that particular disease. I am not fully in agreement with this approach because the treatments may change. It's very important that Ayurveda clinicians publish more than one case report on a study. In fact, if we have 10 to 15 case reports dealing with one disease but different individualized regimens, we'll get a better idea of how Ayurveda is individualizing treatment. So I think case reports in Ayurveda need to be looked at from a totally different perspective. And I'm going to suggest some solutions for how we can deal with this challenge today. So here is the hierarchy of evidence. In modern medicine, we go from case reports to case control study, cohort study, randomized control trial, practice guideline, systematic review, and meta-analysis. This is how the evidence is. Whereas in Ayurveda, most often it starts from clinical reporting of successes, which then we will need to, because here we cannot establish a cause-effect relationship. In fact, case reports can be used to generate hypotheses, which we can further test through observational studies. And based on the observational studies, we can develop a very strong research question to conduct RCTs. Even RCTs can be conducted for complex Ayurvedic treatments. Where feasible, we can do RCTs, or we may have to stop with observational studies. And once we have strong evidence that the treatment is actually working in clinical practice, we could do studies to understand mechanism of action. So in the Ayurvedic scheme of evidence, case reports is actually the starting point. The more case reports are reported by clinicians, the more hypotheses we can create, and more well-focused research can be done, which eventually will help us to understand mechanism of action of established Ayurvedic treatments. So I also want to say why we should write case report is because Ayurvedic texts have also mentioned this. Charaka actually tells every time you treat a patient, you have to give an argument, you have to give a rationale, you have to substantiate the outcomes of the treatment with proper rationale. So vina tarkena ya siddhir yadricha siddhirevasa. If you cannot justify your treatment, why the outcome came, then it is to be dismissed as chance effect or accidental effect. So Ayurvedic texts say that every case should be reported. And we should, for that is the reason why we should have, as I'm going to tell at the end, not only journal case reports, but case repositories, then preprints, and then journal case report. We need to create a mechanism for that. Anyway, here Ayurveda also has a method of knowledge creation. I'm not going into the detail, just showing that there is a scheme, and some other occasion we can discuss it. And we can definitely find in Ayurveda texts a discussion on methods of reporting outcomes, which today we can compare with case report, observational study design, as well as control study design. So why I'm showing this is to just indicate that case report should be an integral part of evidence building in Ayurveda, and which is in tune with what the traditional textbooks have also been discussing. But for want of time, I'm not going into the details. Now, another point I'd like to make before I conclude is that case reports in Ayurveda is a very important component in what we can call as clinical practice outcomes research, especially in diseases like cancer, where a lot of clinical practices are happening, because of unmet needs. Patients are there is no planning. I mean, patients are just going to Ayurveda clinicians, they're getting treated, but these outcomes are not being documented. So a very rich resource that we have to consider when we're looking at what can Ayurveda do in cancer is clinical practice outcomes research. So case reports can generate preliminary evidence that can plan more rigorous studies. So even multiple case reports pertaining to one disease are relevant. So my last point is, that is why we need a whole mechanism. We are working in our institute to facilitate this, because as I said, all the case reports cannot immediately be published in journals. We can only publish few. So we need other alternatives. We have set up a clinical case repository. Ministry of AYUSH also has it. What we have done is very structured. So it could be used for collecting information on clinical research outcomes. It is like a filter. So from here, the best case reports will go into preprint servers, and from preprint servers, the most rigorous case reports can go to journals. So if you create a mechanism like this, we will be able to generate and gather more evidence. So this is a brief, introduction to why we need case reports in Ayurveda and how it is, the whole process is a bit different from how it is done in modern medicine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ram Manohar sir, for this very brief and but covering all the aspects, why, when, where. It's really nice. Thank you very much. So at this juncture, I want to inform the participants that those who have questions, they can keep their questions posted in the chat box or in the question QA box there. So you can keep on your questions so that can be asked for the panelists at the end of the presentations. Also, it is also requested to all the participants to type their email IDs because this webinar, when we started, there was no registration. So we will be coming up with a further webinar in the series of webinars for this special issue. So we'll be able to send you the link directly if you send your emails into the chat box. So thank you for this. And going to ahead, before that, Dr. Ramanor, what you were saying about the novel ideas or adverse events, it reminded me about two case reports in earlier Lancet in 1960s. Thalidomide and congenital abnormality were reported. Later in 1980s, Kaposi
The
sarcoma.
whole pharmacovigilance movement started because of such reports.
Yeah, and Kaposi sarcoma, where 8 cases were reported in 1980s. Further, that led to a new that is identifying a new disease, the sexually transmitted disease like HIV. So yeah, so thank you for this nice presentation. Going ahead for the next speaker, Dr. Sripad Banavali. Sir is Director Academics at Tata Memorial Center. Tata Memorial Center has many centers across the country. Dr. Sripad Banavali is Professor and Head of the Department of Pediatric Hematology at Tata Memorial Hospital, Mumbai, and BKL Valavalkar Hospital, Ratnagiri. He has keen interest in leukemia, cell biology, immunology, cell kinetics, and experimental oncology. So I invite Dr. Sripad Banavali sir to please to brief us on the care guidelines and the clinical outcomes in the oncologics perspective. Dr. Banavali. Dr. Banavali has got disconnected, but he has got reconnected to the link now. So I invite Dr. Sripad Banavali. Sir, please start your presentation. You are muted, sir. Please unmute. Dr. Banavali, please unmute. Please unmute yourself.
Hello.
Hello. Hello. Hello. Hello. Hello.
Can you see the screen?
Can you see the screen? Can you see the screen?
Is my voice echoing?
Is my voice echoing?
Yeah, I think there are. If you are logged in two devices, please disconnect from other device.
Hello. Hello. Can you hear?
Hello.
Yeah.
But there's some problem.
You would need to turn off your cell phone or turn off the computer. You have two audio links.
Can you continue? I'll have to join back.
Sorry, there is some technical issue at Dr. Banawali's end. So we'll go to the next speaker for this session. Going to further, next speaker, Dr. Sanjeev Rastogi. Dr. Rastogi is a professor at University of Lucknow, Government Ayurveda College, Lucknow. He is the founder in charge of Ayurveda Arthritis Treatment and Advanced Research Center, AAT ARC, head of at Government Ayurveda College, Lucknow, and Department of Tai Chikitsa. He is a senior editor for Annals of Ayurveda Journal. He is a reviewer for many journals. And his research areas, core research areas are geriatrics, rheumatology, and clinical trials. So I invite Dr. Sanjeev Rastogi sir to please start his presentation. Dr. Rastogi will be talking on how should a case report be written and what do the reviewers and editors expect while writing a case reports. Over to you, Dr. Rastogi.
Thank you, Dr. Gundeti. It's a great opportunity to be here. I was listening to Dr. Ram Manohar earlier and Dr. Julia, so it was quite an eye-opening to listen to these two great orators. Adding just a point to Dr. Ram Manohar, I would simply be saying that putting the case reports at the time when they are having some academic values, they are having some personal values also. If I give you my example, I've published so many case reports in Ayurveda related to the treatment of certain specific conditions. And after publishing one specific case report related to some particular area, what I have seen that we have started flooding of similar kind of patients from across the world. It is not that we are receiving the patients from our own country or from our own places, but we start receiving the similar kind of cases from across the world who are having the similar kind of conditions, and they try to find the answers from Ayurveda for similar kind of conditions. I'll quote you three conditions. One is of the neurogenic bladder, which I have treated some time back, few years back. It was published in JAIM itself. And since then, since I have treated that case, I have received around 20-25 more of such kind of cases, which not only has enriched my experience with a similar kind of treatment in those kind of areas, but has given me an idea that a long case series can also be published. So it was just one case report which got published in a renowned journal, which has created a kind of cascade of similar cases. I mean, otherwise an Ayurvedic physician is never going to get such kind of similar cases, and also not going to get similar kind of cases from across the world. But we have started receiving the similar cases. And similarly, we have published a case report related to achalasia. And again, I have treated number of similar cases from across the country and across the world. I mean, so it has definitely enriched my experience related to that area. And now we are preparing to put a kind of case series related to these 2-3 conditions. So this is one wonderful thing which is also associated with the publishing a case report. I mean, it is not only having certain kind of academic value, but definitely having certain kind of clinical value as well. I am fortunate to be the reviewer of so many renowned journals related to the traditional medicine or the complementary and alternative medicine, including Ayurveda. And I have seen a number of case reports earlier. So there are just a few things which strikes to me, which are, I mean, I find that these things are really critically missing in many of the case reports. And we, as a reviewer or as the editor of a journal, I need to be very critical regarding what kind of case reports we are going to publish. So first thing which I consider is that what is the contemporary relevance of that case? Contemporary relevance of that case means I need to understand that if somebody is talking about that they have treated a case of Amvata or they have treated a case of diabetes with certain kind of Ayurvedic intervention, or they have treated the case of psoriasis with certain kind of Ayurvedic intervention, how does it fits into the contemporary relevance? I mean, what is its contemporary relevance? If we see that in Ayurvedic clinics, the people who are suffering with Amvata, or the people who are suffering with prameha or diabetes, or people who are suffering with psoriasis, are making a major fraction of the patients who are visiting the Ayurvedic clinics, what is the sense of putting a case report there? I mean, if you are receiving similar kind of number of similar kind of cases in your OPD, and you are having these kind of interventions with you, why don't you come up with more serious kind of researches? Why don't you come up with a kind of case series, or why don't you come up even a kind of pilot study with similar kind of intervention? So if I come across with a kind of case which is related with a very, very common clinical condition, I do not agree with the kind of reporting because I feel that it is not really having that kind of contemporary relevance. So most of the times I do not agree with the kind of findings which are being reported in such kind of cases. So this is quite important to understand that what is its contemporary relevance. The second important consideration which I have in my mind as a reviewer is that how authentic and meticulously the information is presented. How authentic information is, I mean, we need to understand that who has made the diagnosis, from where the diagnosis of the case has been made. It is the Ayurvedic physician who has made the diagnosis, or this diagnosis has been made by somebody who has got a kind of expertise in that area, or some objective investigations have been carried out to make the diagnosis. So this is also quite important. How the diagnosis from Ayurvedic perspective has been made, this is also quite important, because this is only, I mean, after knowing this only is going to give you an idea that how this knowledge can be translated. I mean, this knowledge which is already available there in the modern medicine can be translated into the Ayurvedic perspective or from the Ayurvedic perspective. So this is quite important to understand that how authentic that information, how the outcomes were measured, this is also quite important. Many times it happens that the case reports are simply reporting that, yes, patient got benefited, but patient got benefited does not make any sense unless or until it is reported through certain kind of objective parameters, or, I mean, it is really quite important to understand that how the outcomes are measured. At the same time, we need to have the kind of meticulous details of the case. I mean, we need to understand if there are any other kind of coexisting illnesses were available. If a patient of diabetes was also having hypertension, was also having obesity, was also having any other kind of clinical condition which might be affecting the net outcome related to the given intervention, that is quite important to understand that what other coexisting conditions the patient was having. So we need to have a kind of meticulous information available there in the case report itself. What treatment was actually offered, this is also quite important to understand. What treatment is offered means, we need to understand that whether some kind of modern medicine was also being given to the patient at the same time when Ayurvedic intervention was given. Many a times it happens that the people who are writing the case report, they are simply trying to put the positive things there in the case report, whereas some other things which may be having some confounding relevance or some confounding factors may be hidden. I mean, they may not be expressed so explicitly. So this also has to be understood what actually was given to the patient. And what was done to the modern treatment initially taken by the patient, this has to be understood. I mean, if they had been on some kind of modern treatment earlier, we need to understand that what has been done with that treatment which was being taken by the patient earlier. And naturally, the confounding factors have to be identified. One more aspect which I consider while reviewing a case is that, I mean, what are the ethical consideration of that report? The primary question which comes to my mind is that what for the patient has come to the Ayurvedic physician? What for? I mean, what was the compelling reason for him to reach to the Ayurvedic physician? So there can be a number of reasons. It could be the bad prognosis. It could be the no treatment option. It could be the refusal to opt chemotherapy or radiotherapy if we talk of the cancer patients. It could be the unaffordability to opt the surgical or chemo radio care, or the patient may be unfit for chemo, radio, or surgical care. So whatever the reason could be, it is not that simply, I mean, we simply state that the patient has come to Ayurvedic physician for receiving the treatment. We need to identify that what could have been the reason for the patient to opt Ayurvedic therapy. This makes sense. While writing a case report, this really makes sense, that what are the desires or what are the needs of the people who are coming to Ayurveda for the Ayurvedic treatment. So this, I feel that this is quite important. And moreover, at the same time, this is also important that when the Ayurvedic physician is looking at these kind of case report, the people may have come to Ayurvedic physician for any reason, but this is important to know that what Ayurvedic physician has promised to the patient. I mean, if you do not have any kind of experience treating such kind of patients earlier, what would you be explaining to the patient that what Ayurveda is going to do in your case? So how fair you are, how transparent you are while you are explaining the possible outcomes of a case, if a patient chooses that they need to have the Ayurvedic treatment. I'll give you 3 examples. I used to make this practice when I am writing a case report. I give you 3 examples. I have treated a case of metastatic liver disease earlier, way back, I mean, maybe 10 years back, in 2012, possibly it got published, in JAIM it got published. And when they have approached, it was a 72-year lady possibly who was having this metastatic liver disease. And when they have come to me, I simply have explained them that, see, I do not have any expertise related to the cancer management, and I have not seen any patient earlier like this. So just let me know if you really want to have some kind of Ayurvedic therapy. And then they explained that what is their reason of choosing the Ayurvedic therapy. They were not considering her to be fit for the surgical therapy. They were not having affordability to go for the surgical therapy. And there were some other reasons also. I explained that we do not have expertise, and so we cannot promise you for any kind of outcome. If you are seriously willing to have the Ayurvedic intervention, I can simply recommend you some of the treatment. But at the same time, I would be advising you to have the kind of expert opinion from somebody who is having a kind of expertise in that area. So this is how I explain to them. So this is how I consider the case from the ethical parameters or from the ethical aspects. Similarly, I have treated recently one case report related to the mucormycosis. Post-COVID mucormycosis got published. Again, it was published there in the JAIM. This was a case which was suspected to have a kind of mucormycosis, post-COVID mucormycosis. They come to me for asking for some kind of Ayurvedic intervention. This diagnosis was made on behalf of the CT scan. CT scan was suggestive of. I immediately told them that in Lucknow there is a separate ward for the post-COVID mucormycosis. You need to get a kind of consultation there. They went to that place and they found that the place is completely occupied, and the doctor has given them a date after 3 days. In the meantime, what I did that in 3 days, what you are going to do, you can have some kind of simple intervention which is not going to adversely related to your clinical condition. I simply have suggested them to go for this saline nasal irrigation. It was a kind of saline nasal lavage. I suggested them, okay, fine, I don't have any specific treatment for this condition, but you can go for the saline lavage and wait for 3 days till till you get a space there in the this mucormycosis ward there at the medical college. Believe me that they did this process, they did for 3 days. I mean, 2 times in a day, they did this Jalaneti process, the saline nasal lavage. And after 3 days, when they went to the mucormycosis ward there at the medical college itself, there was no fungus. I mean, while getting the scrapping of the nasal mucosa, they couldn't find any fungus there. Although it was diagnosed there with the help of the CT scan. So what I did, I proposed that this could be a simplest remedy for the people who are having this kind of dreaded clinical condition. If they are waiting for their appointments at the experts clinics or the hospitals, at least they can initiate with such kind of things. And I'm happy that this case report got published. So this is also, I mean, I was very clear that, see, Ayurveda is not really going to offer any kind of a specific thing related to that area, but you can do, and I'm sure that this is going to benefit you. And similarly, one more case we have treated. We treated a case of hepatic failure also. This is also published. This published in Journal of IU from Jamnagar. And this was a case, elderly case, around 60-65 years, and he happened to be the father of a pathologist there in the district hospital in Lucknow. And he was having serum bilirubin level around 23, and he was there. I mean, he was in the hepatic coma position. They were trying each and everything which was available there in the modern medicine, and I mean, there was nothing happening in the patient. So they asked us, they came, I mean, so that gentleman came to our college and asked if Ayurveda can do something in that area, I mean, for this patient. Then again, we simply have explained that, see, I mean, if the patient is having 22 serum bilirubin, I do not expect anything very specific to happen in this such case. But if you are insisting, if you are willing, we can initiate some kind of treatment. And we are going to see that what is going to happen. And again, same kind of thing has happened to this patient. We treated this patient for around 10-15 days. And in 10-15 days, his serum bilirubin got drastically reduced. It came down up to 8. The patient came back from the coma. He started responding to the treatment. He started responding to the commands which are being given to him. And this is how. But the thing is this, that we explained it very explicitly, clearly in the beginning also, that see, I mean, this is the kind of a status of the knowledge which we have. And if you feel, we can start giving you the treatment. So I need to understand as a reviewer that what was the ethical consideration of the patients who are being treated. And one more very important thing is Dr. Julia and Dr. Ramanur was saying that there are a number of failures also. When you treat some patients, it is not that everybody is going to be a kind of success story. There are kind of number of failures also. What we do with the failures? It is not that every patient who is being treated by us is going to be completely cured. There can be failures. So what do we do with those kind of failures? So in this perspective, this is quite important to understand that what are the ethical consideration, because every patient who is coming to the Ayurvedic OPD is not going to get cured. So this is important to understand. And finally, what I look in the case report, what is the most compelling message that case report has? It is, if it is a kind of any report related to a success story, okay, this case has come to us and we have given this and this kind of treatment and this patient got cured. I mean, this case report simply says this kind of thing, or it reports some kind of adversity, or it has something hidden there. I mean, some more compelling messages there. And I really love to see if there is any kind of compelling message there in the case report. I again give you the examples of my case report, which we published, 3 case reports. I give you the example. Very recently, a case report got published there in JAIM. It was related with the Bhallatak adversity, idiosyncratic reaction to Bhallatak. A patient treated, I mean, a patient was this ankylosing spondylitis, was treated with the Bhallatak Rasayana in our hospital, our OPD. And he started developing some rashes after receiving the Bhallataka preparation for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. So it was an example of idiosyncratic reaction, and it was an example of cumulative toxicity basically. Because it is not the first dose of the Bhallatak which has given the adversity, it was not the second dose, it was not 1 day, 2 day, 3 day. After 15 days or after 21 days, the patient has started giving the sign and symptom of the toxicity, drug-related adversity. We stopped the treatment, we stopped the Bhalataka, we continued other kind of treatments. And after stopping the treatment, the rashes got disappeared. We proposed a wonderful hypothesis related to this case, and we said that this is an excellent example of the cumulative toxicity. I mean, the toxicity occurs in such kind of patients only when the plasma concentration of the particular alkaloid or particular chemical substance reaches at that particular level. So until or unless you give this treatment for a certain period of time, this kind of toxicity is not going to appear. And this is, I mean, the same kind of thing happens with the therapeutic effectiveness also. So this could be one wonderful hypothesis which can explain that why Ayurvedic drugs are giving delayed responses. I mean, if you are treating a patient of rheumatoid arthritis, everybody knows who is treating the rheumatoid arthritis patient. Everybody knows that with the first dose or with the second dose or within 1 week or 10 days, the patients are not going to respond to the treatment. But then after a while, maybe if you treat them for 1 month or for 2 months or 3 months, they are going to start having the kind of responses with the same kind of treatment which has been initiated three months back or 2 months back. So this is again a kind of perfect example of cumulative therapeutic effectiveness. Again, I say that until or unless that particular substance, that particular therapeutic substance reaches at that biological level or the plasma level, it is not going to be effective. So for the effect also, it needs to reach at that certain particular concentration, and for adversity also, it needs to reach at that particular. So this was one specific message which was carried by that case report which got published. So this was a perfect example. Similarly, I was talking about the hepatic failure case. The message which I have given in that case was that I argued that why Ayurveda is not getting allowed to be practiced in the ICUs. We have the example, we have shown the example that a hepatic failure patient can be treated with the help of the Ayurvedic medicines. And Ayurveda, unfortunately, Ayurveda is not getting allowed to participate in the ICU care. So we argued that, see, this is a perfect example that the patient can come out of the ICU, out of the coma with the help of certain kind of Ayurvedic medicines. So please allow us to participate in the ICU care also. There can be certain examples where the patients can be taken out from the coma kind of condition. And second, more important message which I tried to give in this case report is that the patient who was having a hepatic failure was treated with the kind of medicines which are otherwise said to be the hepatotoxic drugs. I mean, which are said to be having the kind of properties. I mean, we treated the patient with the carbometallic kind of compounds, which otherwise the people are going to say that, so I mean, these are quite unsafe because they are going to create some kind of hepatotoxicity. And we have given a kind of example that unfortunately, rather than creating hepatotoxicity, these drugs which we have given to the patient were able to bring him out from the state of the coma. So just think of that, what Ayurveda is actually doing. And similarly, we talked about the Jalaneti case. Again, we have given a kind of message in that. It is not that the Jalaneti has given a wonderful effect to that patient and he came out of the mucormycosis. The most important message which we have given is that we argued that these such kind of simple remedies or intervention should be taken on the priority while making a kind of a strategic plan to treat the mucormycosis. I mean, this could have been taken. I mean, it is not that I have treated a case with the Jalaneti and I have got the wonderful responses. This could have been tried and this could have been given a kind of proper weightage to treat such kind of people across the country, because in our country we know that we do not have so many of these kind of resources where every patient can get a kind of proper attention within time. So if there is any kind of waiting time for the people, at least they could have been advised to go for such kind of treatments at home. And there is a possibility that number of people can get benefited from some such simple interventions. So every time when I look at the case reports, I every time look at that, whether it is a kind of simple narration of the benefits which the patient has received or adversities which the patient has got, or if there are some kind of hidden stories also, or some kind of hidden thing also. So I need to look at what is the compelling message while presenting the case report. So from the reviewer's perspective, from the editor's perspective, every time I try to look at these kind of findings there if they are present in the case report. Thank you, Dr. Manohar.
Thank you, sir, for your detailed, elaborated explanation on this reviewer and author's perspective, and also as an editor perspective while writing a case report. The compelling message, that is hypothesis is important, is also a take-home message for your presentation. So thank you. We'll take questions after the presentation from all the panelists. So we'll go to the next presentation by Dr. Banawali. Dr. Sripad Banawali, sir, I have introduced you when you were disconnected. But once again, I will introduce you. Dr. Sripad Banawali is the Director Academics at Tata Memorial Center. He is a professor and head of the Department of Oncology. Sir, I request you to please start your presentation.
Hello, can you hear?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay, great. Sorry, actually today I think there were so many Zoom meetings at the same time. Now all got interconnected. So I'll like to share my screen.
Please share.
Just one minute. Huh? So good. Actually, I've been hearing some, though I couldn't hear all of it. I've been hearing for in between this thing. It looks like a very interesting discussion.
Yes.
Yeah. So let me share my screen if possible. Can't. I don't know why I'm not being able to share my screen. Can you allow me to share my screen, please?
Sir, you are allowed. You are a panelist. So otherwise, you can send me your.
No, it should be. Give me.
Okay.
Just 1 minute. Yeah. Okay. Can you see the slides now?
Yes, we can see.
Oh, I'll put it on the presentation mode.
Please.
Yeah. So thank you very much, and thank you for bearing with me. So I've been again talking on the same this thing. All this has been told, so I will not talk about this. But definitely, I'll talk about this in modern medicine, so-called modern medicine or allopathic medicine. We publish our data as per the level of evidence. So that's been given a lot of this thing stress in modern medicine, that you have to treat as per the evidence based medicine, and as per our this thing we level the or call the evidence based on the levels, and the topmost level is the level 1, and that's what has been told again and again, that we do what we call randomized trials, wherein many times we do double blinded randomized trials. That means no one knows, the doctor doesn't know, the patient doesn't know whether the patient is getting the new treatment or the standard treatment. So we do that and then collect the data, and so that it's not even like every other patient. It's done as per the basically computerized system, wherein some patients get the standard treatment, some do not get, and then ultimately we collate find out the data and see whether the treatment works or not. So that is level 1B evidence, and above that
Excuse me.
also what. Hello.
Can you advance your slides?
I advanced. You cannot see the slide.
Just the first slide we see.
Okay, maybe I'll get out of this thing if you don't mind. Now I can see the slide. Second
Yes.
one.
If you can advance.
But I'll know if I go to slideshow again, it will go. So bear with me. Actually, I mean, I have to talk. So if you
That's
can see
okay.
this, can you see the slide level of evidence? Slide.
Yes, I see that.
Okay, I'll keep on this. Maybe I don't want to waste your time again by doing that.
Thank you.
But basically, yeah, so level 1B evidence is randomized control trials. And above that is level 1A. That means we collect data from various randomized trials on the same topic and then collate the data and see whether it really shows any efficacy or not. So that is level 1A evidence. And if you see on this, the lowest the what we call importance we give is to the case reports and case series, and that has a reason. Actually, I would say it's not that we don't want.
खाली वाइट कर दिया
But if mic is on,
तो अंदर थोड़ा सा काम है हाँ 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 थोड़ा कर लिया करो कभी कभी आप अंदर वाइट कर लिया करो
It is requested to please
Doctor,
unmute yourself.
please
पड़ेगी हॉस्पिटल जाकर रहने वाले बहुत
Please mute
Maybe it's
yourself.
the mic.
तो लेके और सबसे बड़ी चीज अभी जानते हैं बच्चों को हमने ये करना सिखा दिया शुरू कर दिया इस बार बाथरूम साफ करना इतने भी बड़े नहीं हो मतलब इनको चीजें अरेंज करना जैसे ना
Can the host mute the participant?
खिलौने के लिए
can the organizers mute this person?
नहीं तो हेल्प होती है ना शुरू तो फिर ऑर्गेनाइज रहना हो आना देगा नहीं तो फिर फैलाएंगे पूरा
Rashna भी
I
नहीं
will check. I will check.
नहीं कभी शुरू से अगर कराएंगे ना और थोड़े बड़े हो जाएंगे इनसे कह देंगे चड्डी बन
Sir, please,
Hello.
please go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah. So the lowest this thing importance we give is to case reports, not because that we don't want case reports to be published, but I'll talk about it in the next slide. You know why we do that. But basically, case reports are also important, and we do publish case reports also. And this example is the best I can show you. Basically, this was a patient, a young child with what we call hemangioma, wherein there is collection of blood. So this is like, these are not cancers, but this is an abnormal collection of blood vessels. So that this is hemangioma, and the standard treatment for this till that time was corticosteroids or steroids. Prednisone was the common treatment for that. But you see, this patient did not get much benefit in after 4 weeks of steroid. Fortunately for this patient, the patient also had a heart element called the cardiomyopathy this patient had, and for that this patient was started on propranolol, which is a beta blocker and is used for various conditions in allopathy. But this patient was started on propranolol not for this hemangioma but for the heart condition, and you see after just 1 week there was a response. After a few months there was more response, and you can see at the end of 9 months of or 7 months of propranolol there was near total regression of this tumor. So see, this is a single case report which was published in one of the most prestigious journal that we have, the New England Journal of Medicine. And why this was published? Because two things is: one, for this type of the hemangiomas, there was no standard treatment at that time, and whatever so-called standard treatment was there was not very efficacious, had a lot of side effects, especially in a growing child. So that was one. So need was there. And second thing, this patient had near complete response with this drug propranolol. So this patient, this case report was published in a good journal, and then this, but it did not stop at that. Later, a randomized trial was done, and the more evidence was gathered, and ultimately now this has become a standard of care. And based on this data that was there, we thought actually that if it works in hemangioma, will it work in a a cancer that is of the blood vessels, what we call the angiosarcoma? And then we treated our patient with propranolol and showed near complete, actually sustained complete remission using propranolol along with other therapy. But then we did not stop at that. We have again published further case series of using propranolol for patients with angiosarcoma. So case reports are important, provided they give some basically good outcomes or something different. And that is why it is told that why do we publish case reports if there is an unexpected association. This has been discussed, I won't go into that, but there is something unique of the case, then it is discussed. If there is some treatment which for conditions that do not have good treatment, but we don't stop at that, and why it is important to do randomized trial is that basically many times, it may be a chance association. It may be that this patient benefited, but other patients may not. So we cannot stop or say that once a case report is published, that is a standard of care, or that's a good treatment for that condition, because it may be a chance association also. And that is why we just publish case reports, so that others can then work on it and then basically find out if the treatment is really good or not. And there are other things also, that if there are something, unusual side effects or unusual effects or something, unusual symptoms that are there, that has to be published, so that case reports are published in modern medicine, allopathy also, but it's not very common to publish. So there are many journals who do not basically accept case reports, as has been discussed by others also, that there are few journals who really accept case reports, but there are dedicated journals who publish case reports also. And you have to basically, that's why you have to select an appropriate journal for that. Today if you send a case report to any JAIM, they may not accept it because they don't accept the case reports at present. So each journal also changes over time. But there are journals like the British Medical Journal, BMJ, which has a separate BMJ case report journal, so you can do that also. But it's very important. So why it is important to it's like it was discussed by Dr. Ramohan. Unlike in Ayurveda, in allopathy, we stress a lot on what we call reproducibility. That means if I do something here tomorrow, and when I publish it, the same thing can be done by a doctor in US, or a doctor in Africa, or any part of the world, or a doctor in a remote village also. So that is the thing, that whatever we publish has to be reproducible. And that is why when we publish something, it is not based on a concentration or a drug or a method done by a particular Vaidya, or basically done in his or her lab, or these are medicines available only at certain places. So what we publish usually is in such a detail that has to be, actually not can, has to be reproducible by other people also. And that is why what happens in, I won't go into all this detail, but especially why what I want to stress in allopathy, what we do is that basically we have the case reports when we write has to be in detail, and every aspect of treatment that we have given. I'll forward the slides, I'll just show you what we do. But basically what we do is every part of the treatment that is given to the patient has to be mentioned in that article, so that it can be reproduced by somebody else also. And why we don't go on publishing case reports is that if one has done, maybe a few more will be accepted as case reports, but once there are 2 or 3 of such articles in literature, there is no need to keep on publishing the same case reports if they treated by the same manner or with the same drug. Then you have to go forward and go to the second level of evidence, that wherein we can do a phase 2 study, that means treat with that drug in a group of patients and publish that, or go up on that. If you have a phase 2 data, that means more number of patients show benefit, then we go on to the phase 3 study, wherein we do randomized trials, wherein we give one arm gives the standard treatment, the other arm gives the treatment that the person has proposed, so that then we know once for all whether this is a treatment is efficacious in that condition or not. So that is the reason why in modern medicine we give a lot of stress on basically um, uh, randomized studies and not on case reports. But they have, like I told, case reports also has importance. And this is basically the very important thing is that you have to provide all the relevant examination, laboratory tests, whatever report treatment that you have given to the patient has to be written in this thing. So this is the very important, that each drug's name, strength, dosage form, route, dates of administration, everything has to be done. And when we write case report, there's a lot of onus on the person who writes the report. He or she has to go back to the patient, examine the case files in detail, because there are many times we see across, and it may be both ways actually. In modern medicine also, the patient we think that they has responded to the treatment we have given, but the patient may also be taking other medicines like Ayurvedic medicines, and vice versa. There are people who have published things with Ayurveda where we know that the patient was also on the modern medicine. So when we publish a case report, we have to make sure that what is included in that thing has all the information, because what happens in randomized trials is that you are treating many patients at given time, so that even if one or two patients are on Ayurvedic and allopathic medicines, or taking something else along with that, it may die, it may be nullified. But when you write a case report, you have to make sure that what you want to report, or what you want to say, that has caused the outcome, has to be, you have to make sure about be sure about that, because otherwise the case report will have no meaning and the reproducibility will not be there at all. So it's very important that you have to give all the information in the publication when you write. But there are this thing, journals who still accept, and I'm just giving some of my examples. For example, I do a lot of what we call metronomic therapies, which are new type of therapies. These are not standard of care. So this, when we publish this, these are easily acceptable because this is a different way of treating. For example, this was a patient of cholangiocarcinoma, multicentric, which really are not amenable to standard treatments. Outcomes are very poor. And you can see this is a multicentric cholangiocarcinoma, doing well even after 5 years, and basically can be considered even cured of this thing. So this was treated in a different way. So this was easily acceptable as a case report, and this is just, actually this is on print now, not even got the number. Recently accepted another case report in one of the prestigious journals, where we have treated a patient with Burkitt's leukemia, which is a very aggressive type of tumor, requires a lot of high dose therapy and expensive therapy. And this patient, because of various reasons, or did not want to take the standard treatment, we gave the metronomic therapies, and is doing well even 3-4 years down the line. So this such type of reports are acceptable for even in modern medicine, but it has to be a different type of treatment, or it has to be a different type of presentation, something that is unique and not has been reported in the literature in the past. Because if there are multiple case reports giving the same treatment, it will have no meaning. But then the journal will say, now do a phase 2 study or do a randomized trial and then come to us. Otherwise, this is of no use. So there are ways to publish case reports, but we have to be in modern medicine, at least we have to make 2-3 things. One, it has to be unique. So we have to go do a lot of literature search and make sure that there is no published data on that type of presentation. And the other thing is that basically whatever we write has to be in detail, so that it is reproducible by others. So definitely there is a role of doing case reports, but a lot of onus depends on the person who is reporting that case. And we have to be true to the science and make sure that whatever we publish is reproducible. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Banavali. Thank you. The integrative to science is very important, what you have mentioned, and reporting the uniqueness and the particular treatment, how it has converted into further studies. Thank you for your nice presentation and detailing about the guidelines, how to report a case in the oncology perspective. So moving further, now it is almost 4:15. One of our panelists, Dr. Ram Manohar, has to leave at 4:30. The program has been scheduled from 3 to 4:30. We thought that this will be over and we can go to QA session. But as Dr. Ram has to leave, there are few questions I will take from the chat box, especially for Dr. Ram. There is one question. Dr. Ram Manohar, are you here?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So, Dr. Ram Manohar, there is one question for you, especially they ask, I think the first question that I will ask to Dr. Rastogi, because that is to that. Are Ayurvedic concepts and terminology in Sanskrit accepted in case report of Ayurveda clinical outcomes?
Yes, of course. You see, it all depends on the journal. We have published many case reports and we have used all the Ayurvedic terminologies in it. It depends on some of the journals. You must read their policies. think if you, in my experience, if you also give the English equivalents, relevant, make it readable and understandable, it is definitely accepted.
Thank you. I want to just add here that Ministry of Ayush has come up with a Namaste portal, that is National Ayurveda Morbidity Codes portal is there, where the standard terminology for different systems of medicines are available. So this can that can be referred for using the uniform terminology while reporting the Ayurvedic terms. Going to further, there is one question for Dr. Ram again. Is from Dr. Madan Thangavelu. He says that Dr. Ram swift detailed facile mechanism for harvesting and archiving details. Ramji, please could you share how a system like Rudra or variation of Rudra can be used to such early harvesting and archiving of treatment responses and outcomes, including side effects, before advancing to the case studies? So in addition to that, Dr. Ram, I wanted to ask, also inform us about your portal for the case studies and case reports.
So, Rudra was a program that we initiated in Coimbatore in 2006-7 at that time. The whole idea was to capture the data even as the patients are being treated. And most clinicians are very busy. So what we did is we created a documentation team. In our clinic, patients have a waiting period before they're able to see the clinician. So the idea was to use this waiting period in a constructive way. So a team of young doctors will sit there. So this is possible in hospitals where there are interns and clinicians who need training. So they are sitting and collecting all the data. So the patient workup intake is done very thoroughly before they meet the consulting physician. And so it becomes a dual purpose. The patient's waiting time is used constructively. They don't have to simply sit and wait. They also feel that they are being treated, I mean, their case is being thoroughly, documented, because one doctor is dedicatedly sitting for that. And all the data is seen by the clinician by the time the patient comes inside. So seeing on the screen that busy clinician's time is also reduced. He gets all the basic data that is necessary and has to only add additional information. And this captures all the information. Since the patient is independently seen by a doctor before he goes to the clinician, all the information patient gives is added, including adverse events and all that. So actually, many of even our NIH funded study, we could predict outcomes and do a very systematic RCT because we had data captured from the Rudra program. This requires a little bit of dedication. It cannot be done in individual clinics because some investment of infrastructure and personnel is required. But definitely in teaching hospitals, of Ayurveda teaching hospitals, it can definitely be done. Now I want to show, coming to the second point, our portal. So actually this is the AYURCell portal, because we know a lot of cases are there. Clinicians get discouraged when they are not able to publish it easily. So we need a step-by-step process where clinicians can start publishing, and then filtered cases can go to the next level of preprint server. So AYURCell is a portal where if you want, even now it is, anybody can submit it to our team. Your clinical cases will get showcased here. There will be case summaries where we will convert your clinical case into audio, audio narratives, video narratives, brief, graphical abstracts. Everything is done by a team. So the whole idea is a busy clinician does not have time to do this process. So in modern medicine, they had medical transcription. This is very similar. You just send your case details to our team by WhatsApp, put all the images, everything. Our team will construct it into a full-fledged. So you can, when you go to the listen mode, you can listen to all the audio files. I mean, this is just a framework. This is going to be launched next month. You can see here different audio files. Lack of time, I'm not going into all the detailed demonstration. When you click watch, you will see a lot of videos, graphical abstracts, biomedical. So your clinical case will be showcased in a way that can be used for teaching. So here are the video summaries. Then you can see so somebody who is wanting to learn, sorry, they can quickly run through the clinical cases are presented as graphical abstracts. Then clinical cases are presented as short summaries. So people who are interested can read this. So it's just like creating an educative presentation of each person's clinical case. You can search by biomedical diagnosis, Ayurveda diagnosis, wild search, advanced search. Featured cases will be highlighted here. It will keep changing. All the clinicians who have contributed to this AYUSH will be meant here. This could also become your own clinical profile. Any good clinician, somebody can come here, search, and get all this information. I know there is not much time, so I stop here. This is something available for. I want to show one tool which will soon be released, because when you are writing a case report, creating a timeline is very difficult. So this is a tool. You just have to type all the data here. There is no time to demonstrate it. And when you type everything, you just click preview timeline and the timeline is automatically created for you. This will be a very useful writing tool for clinicians. We will make it available to the public, because the formal launch is yet to happen in next 1 month. So many such tools we have created, which will enable clinicians to publish case reports more effectively. And I would strongly encourage all good clinicians to contact our AYUSH team, and you can start communicating through WhatsApp or email, and this will be a good service. So once you have your case in the AYUSH, convert it into a preprint form. If you are interested, we will publish it for you in a preprint form. And from preprint to journal, it is your responsibility. Because once you get it in a preprint form, I think 90% of the work is done. So this is a service that we are doing to the whole community. There is no charge or any fee for this. It is completely free of cost, and we are supported by the ministry, for this facility.
Thank you, Dr. Ram Manohar, for this update, and we look forward for these particular tools. And this will definitely help the researchers, physicians, especially the physicians, busy physicians who are engaged.
Maybe I can also just show this. There is another tool called the Case Care Writer, if people do not know.
Exactly.
Care Writer is a tool given by the care group itself, the care guideline group. You can just type Care Writer and you go there, you have to log in. And then for writing a new case, again, you have a very nice template here. Put the title, put the keywords, then you go next. All the columns will come. You enter a user's, if you want to add some co-authors, you can add that. Then you have to, agree to some guidelines, and then, type your abstract, introduction, narrative. So this ensures that you will follow the care guideline when you are writing. Automatically corresponding author, all those things, as you write that data, everything will keep coming in. And when you are done, you can just export this into a full-fledged case report, and then it is ready for submission. So many such tools are available, and I would strongly encourage all good clinicians to use this and submit and publish more cases. We also have a Ayur case archive. In case you want, before sending to a journal, you want to do a preliminary publishing, because journals take long time, you can come to Ayur case archive, and here we have already published many such preprints. And publishing as a preprint doesn't prevent you to later publishing it again in a journal. So here, this is a chance for you to publish very quickly. Then based on the feedback that you get, you can refine it and then send it to journals. So thank you very much. I think I covered all the points Dr. Manohar wanted me to discuss.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for briefly reviewing this also. Dr. Ram, thank you for your presence here and sharing your thoughts and presentation, nice presentation, and enriching our knowledge. Thank you very much. We look forward for further webinars. Thank you. So we'll go further on the. We'll go for next presentation by Dr. Vinita Deshmukh. Dr. Vinita Deshmukh is the Deputy Director at Integrated Cancer Treatment and Research Center, Wagholi. Dr. Vinita Deshmukh is a senior Vaidya, researcher, academician, a guide for PG and PhD at the Wagholi College. She is dedicated, she worked in the integrative oncology since 2 decades. I request Dr. Vinita Deshmukh to please present on the topic of communicating outcomes of cancer management.
Hello.
Yes, you are audible.
Okay.
Please
So,
make a full screen.
full screen. Okay. Sir, full screen. It's a full screen.
We have your next slide, presenter mode. There you go.
Ma'am, can you right click and hide the presenter's view?
Just a minute. Hide the presenter view. Yes. Fine. Hello. Can I start?
Yeah, please, ma'am, please.
So today, my topic is communicating outcomes of cancer management. Now, I will not go in detail about care guidelines and everything because many speakers spoke about it. But related to my topic, the care, this is a checklist of care guidelines, and from topic number 6 to 13 are relevant to my today's topic, that is communicating outcomes of cancer management. So there the things involved are clinical findings, timeline, diagnostic assessment, therapeutic intervention, follow-up and outcomes, discussion, patient perspective, and informed consents. So all these topics are covered under this topic. So now we will see what is the importance of case report, especially in Ayurvedic medicine. So the case report, it reflects individual response to Ayurvedic treatment in cancer patients. It emphasizes importance of personalized Ayurvedic treatment, taking into consideration variations in 10 factors to be studied while deciding Ayurvedic treatment like dosha dhatu mala, habitat, strength, time, constitution, digestive power, age, mental state, habitual things, and diet. It also provides leads to treat similar types of cancer patients. It provides clues to plan case control clinical trial on similar type of patients, especially with the assessment of results in case report series. We can conclude the line of treatment in case control studies with the experience of case report series. Now, what is the meaning of outcome measures in medical science? An outcome measure is a result of the treatment or intervention that is used to objectively determine the baseline function of a patient at the beginning of the clinical trial. And once the treatment or intervention has commenced, the same instrument is used to determine progression and efficacy. So this is the definition of outcome measure. Now, what are the basic requirements for confirming the outcome measures in management of cancer? From Ayurvedic perspective, when we write any case report, we have to treat that patient properly. And for treating, the diagnosis of patient from Ayurvedic perspective is very essential. Confirming Ayurvedic line of treatment based on Ayurvedic diagnosis at first follow-up and eventually in successive follow-ups as per patient's condition and disease condition. Because many times it happens that when we treat cancer patient, we never think about writing a case report of this patient. After few years, maybe after 5 years or 10 years, we realize that this is an ideal case to write a case report. But for that, we have not, it's not a routine practice that Ayurvedic clinicians or Ayurvedic practitioners are not treating the patients from the perspective of writing case report. they're treating the patient from Ayurvedic perspective. They are lacking in documenting the outcome measures in these patients. So from the beginning, we have to think about proper line of treatment as well as documentation of outcome measures. So documenting appropriate outcome measures is a very important step in writing case report, and measuring selected outcome measures at appropriate time points is also very important. If we have confirmed the outcome measures, we have to assess them at typical interval. Say for example, if we are treating a patient with Panchakarma Chikitsa, then before Panchakarma, after Panchakarma, say after 1 month, 3 months, or 1 year after Panchakarma, we have to assess the patient and we have to note down the outcome measures of that patient. Then another important thing is adding outcome measures when Ayurvedic treatment plan is changed. For example, when patient is treated with additional Panchakarma treatment, benefits of Panchakarma should be assessed like relief in constipation, heaviness in abdomen, flatulence, loss of appetite as immediate effects, and controlling growth of cancer as long-term effect, and increased disease-free survival after multiple courses of Panchakarma. So when we start treating patient with Panchakarma, your time points of assessment differ and your aims and objectives to confirm outcome measures differ. And lastly, very important thing is that when we plan a treatment, we should be able to write cause-effect relationship of Ayurvedic diagnosis, Ayurvedic treatment modality, and results of outcome measures. Now, from modern perspective, there are certain outcome measures which are confirmed from modern medical science. So these are the outcome measures like signs and symptoms of specific type of cancer, toxicities of chemotherapy and radiotherapy, histopathology, tumor markers, biochemistry, diagnostic radiology, scopy, quality of life, well-being, and weight. These are the clinical responses. They are assessed with various tools like biochemical parameters like hemogram, ESR, LFT, KFT, tumor markers like CA125, CA15.3, CEA, AFP, like that. Then there are many radiological findings with the help of X-ray, sonography, CT, MRI, PET CT, mammography. Along with that, from modern perspective, we have to assess the survival pattern of the disease. And there are three main survival patterns, that is disease-free survival, overall survival, and progression-free survival. When we have to assess the efficacy of our Ayurvedic treatment, we have to assess these survival patterns with respect to relative survival rate. And the last one is patient-reported outcome measure. In that, we have to maintain patient's testimonial, maybe in written form or in the form of videos of patient. So when we tabulate or when we submit a case report, patient reported and highly appreciated. Now, this is from modern perspective. Now I'll just go from Ayurvedic perspective, that we all know that we have mainly four treatment modalities from Ayurvedic perspective. Number one is Shaman Chikitsa, number two is Rasayana Chikitsa, number three is Panchakarma or Shodhana Chikitsa, and number four is healthy diet and lifestyle modification. So whatever treatment we are giving to our cancer patient always lie within these four categories. So in Shaman Chikitsa, there are various types of Dipana Pachana Dravya. There is a treatment called as Kshuddha Nigraha, Trishna Nigraha. Among Rasayana Chikitsa, there are various herbal Rasayana, mineral Rasayana, metallic Rasayana. Among Panchakarma Chikitsa, there are 5 types of Panchakarma Chikitsa. We also advise healthy diet and lifestyle modification to cancer patient. But when you are dealing with outcome measures, we should know that if we are treating a patient with Shamana Chikitsa, what is the goal of that treatment? So here I have shown that main goal of Shamana Chikitsa is Samikaroti Vishaman. That means this treatment should pacify vitiated dosha, dhatu, and mala. So in your outcome measures, when you treat the patient with Shamana Chikitsa, we have to show that with this Chikitsa or with this treatment, whether the vitiated dosha, dhatu, and mala came to equilibrium stage. So that is the goal of treatment, which should be achieved with our treatment and should be shown in the form of outcome measures. If we treat a patient with Rasayana Chikitsa like Chavanprash or Suvarna Basma, the main goal of Rasayana Chikitsa is Dirgham Ayu. That means it increases longevity. Second outcome of Rasayana Chikitsa is Arogya and Tarunavaya. That means it gives healthy life, it delays aging process, and it gives Dehendriya Balamparam. That means it increases strength of body and sense organs. So these are the main outcome measures of specific treatment modalities from Ayurvedic perspective. If we treat a patient with Panchakarma Chikitsa, what is the goal of Punarudbhavaha? That means it is mainly given to prevent recurrence. So this is the main outcome measure from Ayurvedic perspective for Panchakarma Chikitsa. When you give a specific diet guideline or lifestyle modification to cancer patient, what is the goal of that treatment? That Bhavati Arogaha. So that means with this diet and lifestyle modification, the patient should have a disease-free survival. So you have to identify the goals of treatment and you have to document the outcomes from Ayurvedic perspective like this. Now there are, now here I have classified the outcome measures for which are common for all types of cancers and specific for specific types of cancer. So here is a list of common outcome measures for all types of cancers. So if you see any type of cancer patient, he or she always suffers from fatigue, nausea, vomiting, tasteless mouth, altered bowel habit, altered sleep pattern, weight loss, and absence of feeling of well-being. So these are very common things which are observed in all cancer patients. So when we present a case report, we have to initially examine the patient, cancer patient, from these 8 signs and symptoms. We have to examine the patient with 8-fold clinical examination, that is Ashtavida Pariksha, that is pulse, urine, stool, tongue, voice, touch, vision, physical appearance, and Agni. So these are our basic clinical examinations, which we have to examine initially and to all follow-ups. That means these are also the outcome measures from Ayurvedic perspective. There is another outcome measure, that is quality of life, because the aim of Ayurvedic treatment is to keep the person in swasthya stage, that is the person should be healthy. So swasthya parikshan from Ayurvedic perspective is the measure for quality of life. And from modern perspective, there are various tools like QLQ C30 or organ specific QLQ. They are beneficial to measure quality of life. As I explained, disease-free survival, overall survival, and progression-free survival are assessed when they are compared with relative survival rate. Now, here are some examples for specific types of cancer or can be classified as per Strotasa or system. For example, we are treating a patient of leukemia or Hodgkin's disease, NHL, or multiple myeloma. We have to consider the Raktavah Strotodushti Lakshana and the diseases which are related to Raktavah Strotasa. So, for example, in case of leukemia, we have to assess Pandu Lakshana, Raktapitta Lakshana, Chwara Lakshana, and as a tool of outcome measure, we have to grade these symptoms and we have to assess them at specific time points. Now I will speak more about frequency of assessment in next slide. Then for Hodgkin's disease or non-Hodgkin's disease, they are similar to Krumi and Dushta Granthi. So we have the outcome measures that are the signs and symptoms of Krumi and signs and symptoms of Dushta Granthi. For multiple myeloma, most of the patients lie in Ayurvedic diagnosis, that is Asthi Majjagata Vata. So the lakshanas, that is signs and symptoms of Asthi Majjagata Vata, should be assessed in these patients with grading as outcome measures. Similarly, for here are another example of liver or cholangiocarcinoma, CA liver or cholangiocarcinoma. Here also we have to see the outcome measure in the form of Yakrut Vikara Lakshana, Annava Strotodushti Lakshana, and Raktava Strotodushti Lakshana, and periodically we have to assess these outcome measures. Now, there is one area, big area for Ayurvedic treatment is minimizing side effects of chemotherapy and radiotherapy. So in that case also, if we are treating a patient who is under chemotherapy and radiotherapy and coming for Ayurvedic treatment, to minimize it, we have to assess this patient with outcome measures and dividing them system wise. For example, on GI system, there are common side effects of chemotherapy like nausea, vomiting, loss of appetite, loss of taste. On excretory system, diarrhea, constipation, sticky stool. On skin, hand and foot syndrome. On nervous system, peripheral neuropathy. So system wise, you have to segregate the side effects of chemotherapy. We have to assess these side effects initially and specific time points according to CTCAE version 4 or 5. And the time points may be before each cycle of chemotherapy, after each cycle of chemotherapy, on 7th day of chemotherapy, 1 month after completing chemotherapy, 6 months and 1 year after completing chemotherapy, for assessing long-term side effects of chemotherapy. Similar case is for radiotherapy side effects. In that case, mainly we can see the skin reactions in oral cavity cancer, stomatitis, xerostomia, dysphagia, trismus. So here also we have to assess these side effects according to CTCAE version 4 and 5. Now, as we have seen that we Ayurvedic clinicians are treating the patients with the aim of giving Rasayana Chikitsa, Saman Chikitsa, detoxifying Panchakarma Chikitsa. So to establish a proof of concept, whether Rasayana Chikitsa has an immunomodulatory action or not, whether Panchakarma Chikitsa has antioxidant action or anti-cancer effect or not, to assess this, we have to do some lab investigations, that is from basic science. For assessing immunomodulatory activities, we can assess the cytokines immune profile. To assess antioxidant activities, we can study glutathione or catalase. We assess the anti-cancer effect. We have to confirm it with the help of biopsy or radiological assessment. So the time points for these assessment are variable as per aim and expected outcome of Ayurvedic treatment. So in my presentation, I have briefly mentioned the outcomes from Ayurvedic perspective, and what I suggest that for each and every case which we are treating from Ayurvedic perspective, we have to treat that case as if we are going to present that case as a case report or a group of cases as case series, and we have to document it properly. Treatment is very important part, but at the same time, documenting the cases or documenting outcome is also equally important, which helps us to present that case as a case report. Thank you.
Excellent, ma'am. Thank you for this very nice presentation about the Ayurvedic parameters with Ayurvedic aspect, and also Ayurvedic correlates for the disease condition and its evaluation in terms of outcomes. Thank you very much for your nice presentation. I think we are running short of the, but we have crossed 4:30. But I will quickly run with the last presentation on NCI base case series program. Then we'll take few questions, and then I will share my screen. I will make full screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, just non-presentation mode.
Thank you. So this will be like last presentation, and will be like a summary of whatever we have discussed in the other speakers. This is basically a National Cancer Institute initiative. Best case series review process has been a part of NCI since 1970s. There is a report of initially there is a report of Lettrell in mid 1970s. Later in 1990s or mid late 90s, this has come to the Office of Cancer Complementary and Alternative Medicine. So this is a link for NCI BCS. However, this protocol is open now for analyzing existing data and it is not accepting a new case series. Having this disclaimer, I will run through the slides so that we can see how the proper methodology has been set for reporting a case series, and which can be evaluated further for prospective some leads to have good study design studies. So this basically the NCI case series protocol. The report should have this eligible criteria. There should be a confirmed diagnosis based on pathologically or cytologically. Then treatment with an alternative approach exclusively, not more than 4 weeks by the conventional treatment. And there should be a detectable disease prior to the start of this particular treatment. There should be adequate documentation in the medical records of conventional or alternative regimens, and the dates of intervention should be explicitly mentioned. The earlier speaker, Dr. Rastogi, was telling, and even Dr. Ram Manohar was telling about the preparation of timelines. So this is what that is adequate documentation for the dates for intervention and other records. Then there should be identifiable and objective changes in the malignancy during the time of treatment. So once a practitioner interested to be a part of this series, he has to submit the appropriate de-identified cases and to the OCAM. And if that falls into the eligible criteria, then the practitioner is notified to obtain the patient consent so that the NCI will contact to the patients. Then after receipt of this consent, this particular agency will contact to the patients through telephone and explain the protocol, the program, and there will be detailed questions and answer to understand the further medical history and other therapy details. So this is a pro forma of the consent to be taken by the patient, and that is to be submitted. So this is basically a case summary format. Initially the pre-research, that the patient should be de-identified, coded, then diagnosis as verified by the confirmatory diagnosis by biopsy, it should be mentioned. History of present illness with the presenting symptoms, then significant medical history is before the cancer diagnosis, then details of Ayurvedic alternative treatment in interventions. This is unconventional, that is not modern treatment, but any other treatment has been used. So its methods, its dates, its response, then it's from which sources from where the treatment was received. Then complete list of over-the-counter or other prescription medicines. Then what is the current status of the patient? Then the detectable disease prior to the start of this alternative therapy. Identifiable and objective changes in the malignancy during the time of treatment. Written description of pathological diagnosis and available imaging. Further, the medical record should have all the details about the operative reports, discharge summaries, details about the radiation, surgical oncology reports, chemotherapy treatment notes, laboratory reports. What ma'am, earlier speaker, Dr. Vinita ma'am was telling about the details about the markers and the investigation reports. Then pathology reports about the cytology, immunology reports, any bone marrow aspirates and biopsy reports. And these reports must have patient name, specific number, date, and treatment facility. Further, while other reports like the radiology, as per these medical records, there should be enough details about the contact information, because the patient will be contacted by the agency to have the detailed description of all the treatment, whatever has been taken, that should be cross-checked and that will be noted. This is a small summary, a simple, it's a narrative how it is written in a single paragraph, where all the details are written. This has been diagnosed on this date, then the treatment has been taken from this and this, then chemotherapy was given, then radiation was given, and the radiation was stopped, and then the CT scan has showed no significant change with the residual tumor. Then this is the progress notes has to be mentioned, what was the status of disease, Then further, the latest report of the state of disease like endoscopy was performed in this particular case. So after that, the alternative modality was started, mentioning the dates. Then further investigation, the repeat investigations like CT scan or MRIs, or that should be with the dates has to be mentioned. Then further biopsy. Then lastly, the physician notes with their remarks like no evidence of recurrence clinically, or whatever maybe that has to be reported. So this is a sample summary how that has to be reported to them along with these all reports. So these are the biopsy reports, radiology, then progress notes by the physician, along with the details of the physician, the address and the dates to be mentioned explicitly. So what are the outcomes of this particular protocol? This particular protocol has a potential in recommendation for further research and a potential publication in reviewed journals. So this is how the timelines for this particular protocol. At the initially, the practitioner submits, then within 1 week the pre-research, then there is in week's time written consent has to be once in the week 1 that is found to be eligible, he will be asked to take a consent from the patient. And when the consent has been received by the agency, they will ask to submit the whole details, and later that will be reviewed by the expert panels, and after the review the final report will be published. Just I will show the flow chart. This is how the overall protocol goes on. I will enlarge it. So this is how in the first instance the practitioner submits a de-identified summary. The NCI confirms the eligibility of that cases. If exclusion, that will end there only, and if that found to eligible complying to the inclusion, that will further goes, and if that is eligible, NCI will ask to get the consent, and after getting the consent, NCI that will proceed further with the evaluation, and after the evaluation that will be decided whether it is evaluable, that is persuasive, supportive, or invaluable. If it is inevaluable, that will be stopped there only. But if it is supportive or persuasive, that will be taken further and published. And if there are leads that can go into the future clinical designs and trials. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see it.
So this is one of the publication by the group of NCI OCAM. This was published in 2013. This article summarizes the whole process of this best case series program, along with the details of the submitted cases and how it has been evaluated, and what has been rather there. They have also discussed about the challenges of particular this program, how there are many unique challenges are there. I'll go into my next slide. So there are many questions about this particular program. Very importantly, does the NCI best series program evaluate CAM therapies for their effectiveness as a cancer treatment? The answer is no. An evaluation of a treatment's effectiveness is generally done by analyzing the results of a well-designed and well-conducted clinical trials. So this particular program is to provide an assessment of the quality of available data and its utility as a support for justification for further research. So there are challenges for particular this program. It takes much time, so it becomes a prolonged event, and there are issues with the compliance to the criteria, because many of the times when you see the eligible criteria in real setting, there will not be possible to have all those criteria meeting to whatever the data we have. As being a retrospective data analysis, many of the times it will not be possible to comply this criteria. Then availability of the reports, as this again, we have mentioned that this is a retrospective analysis of the cases. Many of the times the old reports are only reports are available. There will not be the slides and the images will not be available. And very importantly, during this program, they were evaluating the slides, the images, the radiological images were also evaluated by the expert team. So this many of the times this is not available with the physician who is treating the cancer patients. Then the data sets, whatever the required data, many of the times that is also not available in real-time practices, and incomplete data is also a big challenge. And getting the consent and approaching the patients is again a big challenge, because the paper which has been published, that has been shown in the earlier slide, they mentioned that the cases that have been submitted by India, and when they were contacted by, because this being a part of this of Indian part, so there were challenges to contact them and to interact with them. So there are certain challenges for particular this program. However, this is a really nice program, how actually the case reports to be evaluated. So this particular base case series is not designed to permit assessment of response to a particular unconventional therapy, but it is used as a vehicle to evaluate case report of unconventional approaches. So the lastly, from this whole whatever has we have been talking, there is definitely a need of documentation, and even earlier speakers, starting from Dr. Ram, Dr. Rastogi, Dr. Banavli, Dr. Vinita. So it is emphasized that there is a need of meticulous documentation, explicit documentation, meticulous, for all the details, including diagnosis, treatments, and outcomes in terms of cancer, using the therapy, whatever it may be. It may be allopathy or it may be Ayurveda or AYUSH treatments. So this was my last slide. Thank you for this, your patience listening. So there are few questions. I will go to the questions. I'll stop sharing my screen. Dr. Rastogi, are you there? Okay, if Dr. Rastogi is not there, there is a question.
Okay.
Dr. Rastogi, are there?
Yes, please.
Okay, so Dr. Rastogi, there are a few questions we'll take quickly, and there is the first question. I think you will be the right person to address this, because the question is from Dr. Swagata. He asks, can a researcher document case report of patient who do self-medication and getting results in specific symptoms or disease, where researcher is directly not involved, no official record?
See, this is a good question, and I have seen number of such kind of cases which are being submitted to our journal. And many times what I have seen that the students who are enrolling the patients for certain kind of clinical study or clinical trial, they choose one particular case or two particular case to be presented as a case report. This should not be done. I mean, this is not really a kind of ethical practice, because those cases are the part of a whole clinical trial. Suppose you are registering the 30 patients, and out of 30 patients, you are seeing that one patient is responding very nicely, and you choose to present it as a case report. No, I'm sorry that this is not going to be accepted by the journal, and we don't encourage such kind of practice, because the result has to be explained as a whole. When you are treating 30 patients, the result of the 30 patients should be explained. It is not that one individual case has to be reported.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Rastogi. I also remember that one of the case report you have published, that where the patient himself was a reporter in your earlier COVID case. I know that during the COVID times it was a case study. So now going to first, Dr. Shubha Chuplunkar, ex-director of ACTREC, Advanced Cancer Treatment Research Center of Tata Memorial Center. at Kharghar is there. I request Dr. Shubha ma'am to please your comments.
Comments on which question?
No, not exactly question, ma'am, but
On
yes.
the program as such.
Yes.
On this series. No, this is I must really congratulate you all for a excellent webinar. We need to integrate both the Ayurveda and the modern medicine to bring in unique case reports like that. Like, you know, where Dr. Vinita has already mentioned the outcome measures. So if you can give endpoint measures using modern laboratory investigations, say, for example, you know, describe an Ayurvedic case and integrate along with it genomics, proteomics, or any such immunological investigation, such data, and make a robust case report. I think that would be very interesting.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So there are I think I will take one question. Would it be acceptable that a single case report includes comparative analysis of 2 cases with specific differences in disease condition treated with different Ayurvedic modalities? Dr. Rastogi, would you like to respond for this?